Mr. Conkey, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. This meeting of the Walton Hills Zoning Board of Appeals will come to order. Today is Wednesday, March 24th, 2021. Time is 6:03 p.m. Because of COVID-19 legislation modifying open meetings in the state of Ohio, we are teleconferencing this hearing via YouTube with asynchronous communication. So we're having two-way communication with the residents and through us through the YouTube. I have received a letter or an email from a resident pertaining to this evening's hearing. I want to give it to the secretary, Mr. Pollack. The hearing is for James and Gilda Conkey of 7700 Somerset Drive in Walton Hills. They are requesting variances to the Village Codified Ordinance 126607, subsection F, subsection 1, 126607, subsection 7. Accessory structure is located in the front yard, not permitted, and 126607 F7, recreational vehicle parked in the front yard, not permitted. We are having a hearing at this time because at the present time, Mr. and Mrs. Conkey have the shed and the recreational vehicle in their yard, and he appealed to the Village Codified Ordinance. Mr. Conkey, we don't have a full board present, as I mentioned to you last week. One of our members is away, and we would like to know if we can still proceed or not proceed.
No, you may proceed, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, will you review the data for this hearing, please?
This hearing pertains to the appeal of James Conkey, 7700 Somerset Drive, Walton Hills, Ohio. In correspondence dated November 20, 2020, Robert Coleman, zoning administrator, advised Mr. and Mrs. Conkey that a recent inspection of 7700 Somerset revealed 3 zoning code violations. 1, accessory structure erected without permit, in violation of 1258.02. 2, accessory structure located in front yard, not permitted per 126607 F1, 126607 3. And 3, recreation vehicle parked in front yard, not permitted per 126607 F7. In correspondence dated December 3rd, 2020, the Conleys responded to the aforementioned zoning code violations. They indicated that they made several attempts to call the building department prior to erecting the shed. However, due to COVID-19 restrictions, they were unable to inquire what was needed. Regarding 126607 F1, they stated, "Our property consists of mostly front and side yard due to the fact it butts up to the Cuyahoga Valley National Park and Cleveland's Metro Parks Bedford Reservation, leaving us with no other location to install it," unquote. Regarding 126607-3, the rear yard of this property is not feasible or logical to place any structure, unquote. Regarding 126607F1, the Conkleys provided an explanation as to why the recreational vehicle was in the location when observed by Mr. Coleman. In a correspondence dated December 28, 2020, Mr. Coleman provided information pertaining to the applicable codified ordinance. Additionally, he advised that the zoning permit application that has been received for the shed has been denied due to the location conflicting with Walton Hills Codified Ordinance 126607F1. On February 12, 2021, the Village of Walton Hills received an application dated January 8th, 2021 to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The decision being appealed reflects, quote, RV is behind tree line. There is nowhere behind the house to place it. Shed to be left where located. If shed is moved to rear line, it will still be visible from road. The rear area is wet 60% of the year. This piece of property does not have a backyard. My front yard of 3 acres has 2 CEI poles in it. I don't believe my request, and I can't make out what the last word is. I'm sorry. Okay.
I wouldn't be able to tell you that was something my wife typed because I don't type, I don't get confused. But she spoke about the list.
Notification of the Wednesday, March 24th, 2021, 6 p.m. hearing via YouTube was mailed to 8 residents / interested parties. Due to the COVID-19 stay-at-home order, this hearing will be on YouTube. On-site inspection conducted by Mr. Velk on 3/12/2021, Ms. Workman on 3/24/2021, Mr. Rich on 3/12/2021, Mr. Pollock on 3/9/2021. There is a Gmail regarding the hearing, and it states Paul, and it's from Maria Atkinson, resident. The resident at 7830 Somerset Drive called and wanted the zoning board members to know she has no problem to James Conkey having the accessory building where it is. She is unable to view the meeting tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Secretary, will you please read the 2 ordinances?
Yes. Okay, 126607, accessory use regulation. A, accessory use permitted in the R1 Country Home District shall comply with the regulations set below. A3 is all accessory buildings shall be located in the rear yard only. And Schedule 126607 permitted accessory structures in front, side, and rear setback. It says detached accessory buildings, including garages, yard permitted rear, minimum setback from the lot line. Front, of course, is not applicable. Side 20 foot, rear 20 foot from the lot line. (126607) 7 states outdoor storage of recreational vehicles, rear yard only. Then it goes on to highlight 4 other areas which are not applicable to this hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Persons that wish to testify need to sign a witness list and take the testimonial oath. Mr. Conkey, we're going to ask you to sign in and take the testimonial oath, and Ms. Workman will administer the oath as well. Thank you.
Well, you tell me. No, I
Sure,
can.
that's okay. Do you please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony given or statements made at this hearing are to the best of your knowledge, truthful and factual, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Workman.
That's all you needed? Thank you so much.
Mr. Conkey, we know that you've already written why you want the variance, but we would like to ask you to please tell us why you would like to have the variance for the shed and for the RV.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And speak into the mic, because we're on live. Thank you.
That's good. First off, thank you very much for all the board members. We're very cordial about reaching out to me before they enter the property, and I greatly appreciate that. The RV has been in that location, and I apologize for the photo that was sent to me showing the RV at its location during, I guess, I get incited. It was placed there in order to bring a tree trimmer in to remove some dead limbs. That's why it was out in front of that tree line. It has been in that location since we moved into the house a little over 3 years ago. There's absolutely no other place I could push that thing. As far as I'm concerned, that's it for the RV. The shed, we purchased it end of winter in order to be able to use our garage for vehicles. I am definitely not computer savage. What I did was able to go online and look is my understanding and the way I read it, I didn't need any permission for anything under 200 square feet. The shed is a 20 by 10. We placed it where we placed it because I have stated in our appeal that everything in the tree line is wet and stays wet. We got a lot of canopy back there. I've been told the shed is in the front yard. The village has sent me I'm going to call it a Google view of my property with the structure on it, with everything on it, and highlighted what's my front yard, identified my side yard and backyard. If I look at that document and I look at the shed being placed 1 foot behind the furthest point of my front of my house, I consider that the side yard. That's why it is where it is. No other reason, no other explanation, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Conkey. I guess what we're going to do now is we're going to see if there's any proponents for the zoning variance that have maybe written in a question or said since we've been on the air, and at the present time we do not. Has there been any opponents, those who are against the variance that has signed? Okay, no one has sent us anything on that. And anyone else that wants to say something is going to be us. So I do want to open it up from the board. If we have any questions, we'd like to ask you a few.
May I have 2 questions before the board
Yes, sir.
addresses me?
That's correct, yes.
1, may I ask, if it's a public document, who called on me? Who made the complaint? And 2, who sent an email, and what's that email have to say?
Who sent what email?
I heard there was an email sent.
I read it at the record.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was Maria
Okay.
Atkinson.
That's it. Thank you.
It was a Gmail. So
You're plumber. We don't do that
Okay,
electronic stuff, sir.
okay,
Thank you.
okay.
And I don't know who was against it. I mean, you'd probably have to pull a document request.
Okay. I do have that right, though, to go to, who do I go to? Do I go to the building department? Do I call Lisa?
You could call Lisa. and
Okay.
request
Lisa's
it.
been very good
Yeah.
about getting
Yeah.
paperwork out and answering questions, by the way, so
If I knew, I'd tell you.
that's fine.
Yeah. Can I open it up? Who wants to go first? Mr. Conkey, I guess my question is there seems to be somewhat of a dispute between your front yard and our front yard, or your side yard versus rear yard. You said the shed is on the side yard.
If I take a straight line, sir, that was drawn to me by someone from the village that showed my property with the shed, that straight line places, the shed is placed behind, which would be the north side of that straight line by approximately 1 foot, which according to the definition handwritten on the document, that is my side yard.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's cool. Yeah, that's your front porch, right?
Yeah, that's your side yard.
The front of my house is a bedroom and a bathroom. And
Right.
yes, the front porch, yes.
That's- That's correct.
Yeah.
The reason we're here is because sheds aren't permitted in the side yard.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't have a problem with that.
okay.
I mean, I moved into this area because of my love that I found for it.
Right.
So this is something we're just gonna, I learned the phrase, this is a rabbit hole, I gotta go down it, we gotta handle it, and I move on. We're not gonna make this,
So, you know,
Difficult.
part of my concern is the fact that, when I was at your property, I looked several feet to the west of the property, which is towards your rear yard. And I had my tape measure out, let's say I measured 15 feet, and it didn't seem like much of a slope, if there were anything at all of a slope. I felt that there was room to move that shed towards the rear, okay? Number one. And number two, we're dealing with a transmission right-of-way restriction from First Energy. And the transmission right-of-way restriction from First Energy, when you look at a topo and when you go out to visit your facility, you see that the shed is almost directly underneath those high-tension wires. And they want you 50 feet away from that, or it's against their code, okay? So if the village were to allow that shed to still remain in that location, we would be liable for any problems or any events, if you will, that would take place. And we certainly don't want anything to happen, but if anything did happen, the village would be liable if we were to approve a variance to keep that building where it's located. And secondly, they want 50 feet away from the right-of-way when it comes to a shed that's located in their right-of-way restriction area. So, you know, we have some concern there, okay, and we can come back to that a little bit later. And secondly, as long as we're on the topic of the shed, do you want to continue to have that conversation and then move to the RV and keep it two separate issues so we don't get all confused?
Yes.
Is that okay? Okay, so I would like to open that up, if we could, if there's any more comments on the shed. So there isn't any more comments on the shed. I'd like to add one more, but if we were to move that, and you are concerned with some drainage issues, and we were to move that westward, and the slope of that property isn't what I consider an area that was really, you know, going to hold a lot of water, you currently have the shed on some heavy-duty rocks. I mean, what would prevent you from moving that shed and putting them on some heavy-duty rocks like you have it on right now, and rainwater would not infiltrate the shed like it could if you were on a low-lying area or you didn't have a stable flat area?
may I comment, please?
Yes, sir.
One, I'm not a lawyer.
You're
I
not
don't
a-
know where the legal this and that rides. Jim's understanding of this, Jim's responsible for his property. My property is covered under insurance. I do not understand where the village would be responsible if you say yes. If the village says yes to, we accept that being there, then my next course of action would be going to the real estate board of CEI and say, may I have a variance in order to have this shed under these power lines?
Well,
And then go from there. The other thing is, I turn around and I bring some equipment in when it's dry, and I move the shed, I move the rock, and I cut down a couple more trees, and I push it back under. If you're not accepting, if you do not accept it being on the side of my property, and it goes behind the property, that is putting it approximately 15 feet from the national park. That's my property back there. I don't have anything substantial in that little wedge to place it. So now am I breaking a variance by getting it 15, 20 feet from the national park in order to get it totally behind my house to comply with whatever Walton Hills is asking me?
And that would be
This is
correct.
what I'm asking, what you want from me.
And you would be correct on that, because it's a rear lot is 20 feet from the property line.
Okay,
And so you would have to obtain a variance, like a 5-foot variance
From us or from the village? From
from the village.
From us,
From the
5-foot
village.
variance.
to kick it away from the national park and put it back on my side of my property?
To put it in the rear yard, okay? See, okay, you have your property line,
Yes, sir.
okay? From that property line to where the shed would be placed has to be 20 foot according to our codified ordinance. We could grant a 5-foot variance, meaning that the shed would sit back from the property line with the national park 15 foot. So you'd
So
have
then
five.
then at that point, sir, it's placing it in my side yard. Part of that shed would be in the side yard, correct?
Well, we're saying towards the rear of the property.
I'm not arguing this. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to play a word game. I'm learning here.
Yes.
Right now, according to Jim, that thing is sitting in the side yard. You're telling me to move it from the side yard to close as possible to my backyard, but yet it's still, if you take the way the house is, it's still in the side yard. So I'm gonna turn around, spend $500 to move the shed, but yet ask for another appeal to keep it in my side yard, but as close as possible to the backyard. Sounds a little confusing to this guy.
Well, we still want you to be cognizant of the fact that if you don't get the waiver from the Illuminating First Energy Company, and we don't know how long these things take.
Understand, sir?
It could take 6 months, it could take 6 years. I really don't know how that works because I don't have any connections there.
Yes, sir?
But if you're in there right away, they're just gonna bulldoze it over if they don't give you a waiver. So that's where I'm coming from with responsibility to the village, okay? We don't wanna cross that bridge.
That's fine. On a verbal communication with CEI, in order to get what you guys call a PDF on what they want, the gentleman says, yes, you're gonna have to ask for a variance, and normally a shed that small, nobody is complaining. I say the reason I have to go this direction is because the village, I evidently have an angry neighbor, and the village has now been brought into the situation, and I have to go down this road. So he sent me the PDF. I held off on sending him anything until I find out what the word is of this group. I mean, if you're gonna turn around and say, no, Jim, you cannot have it there, you will move it, then there's no sense in me beating CEI up.
Well, I totally understand what you're saying, Mr. Conkey, but I mean, when I look at the transmission right-of-way restrictions, there are bullet points in here that say, even if you have vegetation in the right-of-way, they don't like it. Even if you have mounds of dirt in the right-of-way, they don't like it.
I read that, and I agree, yet I have a neighbor that has 9 acres, and 4 of his acres has more vegetation and sheds and everything else under that right-of-way. And it is what it is. I'm here for me.
Yes.
So if the assumption of this board says, please, let's get this thing back, scoosh it back, someone come out, be the building department, be
Yes.
more than happy to have Rob out,
Thank you.
and say, this is where I want it, and we go like this, then I'll turn around and hire the equipment to relocate this.
Okay.
It's,
All right.
I don't want to make this hard. I want to live in the village, I want to enjoy it, and like I said to a couple members, I'm dying here. You guys could deal with my corpse.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any more questions on the,
Yes, Mr. Chairperson, I did have a few questions. You said you have 3 acres of land in your front yard.
Yes.
How large is your lot?
My whole lot is, according to the documents, and I hope I'm not wrong, is 3.36.
Okay, and do you know the dimensions of your,
Oh my gosh, no, no, I did not bring that with me.
oh, you don't know how deep it is or how wide the back is?
If I could pull up my phone right now, I may be able to come up with those numbers for you. Can I pull my phone out?
Sure.
Oh, maybe Rob can pull
You
it
want
up.
to teach me how to
Yeah.
use it?
No? Okay.
It's tough to get a signal in here, to use a Wi-Fi even.
No. There's I had a college smart son put a picture on here for me
Yeah.
because I don't do this. My back property line, according to this document for Cuyahoga County, and that would be the north property line, is 491 feet, .83. If I go to the west of my property line, it is 258.82. That's going from the national park up to the cul-de-sac, across what is being considered the front of my property. There's a jog in there. The first one is 310 feet. It kicks 30 feet north, and then going from east to west, it is 121 feet, .69. There's another number in here that I'm not, no, total is 181.83. That would be the last number, replacing the 121. And then going from my furthest east property line, going north to south, it is 288.82. So my property has 5 sides to it. If anybody would like this, I'd be more than happy to hand them the phone.
Any more questions from the board concerning the accessory building? However, move on to the recreation vehicle, which is part of the 126607 F7 code. Any questions from the board?
Yes, Mr. Chairperson. When did you purchase the RV?
Oh, gosh, you'd have to ask the bill lady at home. Let me go back. I'm going to have to tell you 6 years should be close.
Okay, so you were in Cleveland Heights, I think you said?
Yes, I was.
At the time you purchased it?
That is correct.
Okay, and when you were in Cleveland Heights, where did you store the RV?
We stayed down in, what county is that? Carrollton, my son's house. It was a weekend getaway for there.
Okay, so is that the only place you ever went to?
We lived out at the Boy Scout camp, Greater Cleveland, out in Ashtabula, because of the amount of volunteer work the wife and I did. So we had a little place up there,
Okay, so, but it stayed at your son's house,
except when we traveled to go wherever.
except when
Yes.
you used it, okay? And
Yes.
then when you said, I think you moved to Walton Hills about 3 years ago?
I'm going to say 3.5 probably is a very good number.
Okay. And when you moved to Walton Hills, did you leave the vehicle in Carrollton, or did you move it up to this area?
The day we signed for the house, it got moved to that spot.
Oh, you moved it to that spot? Okay, and when you moved it to that spot, did you check with the village about any kind of rules or regulations about where you could park RVs?
No, I did not.
Okay. When you were purchasing the house, did you check with the village about if RVs were allowed, or?
No, we did not.
And have you ever attempted to move it further back into the lot between the trees?
No, for the reason being is we came back from vacation. That's when we found the notice in our mailbox, Thanksgiving. And as soon as I took it off the driveway, it got buried and had to bring home a excavator from a company in order to get my truck out and move the RV back to the location that you saw it at. As soon as it gets wet, I want to say that piece of equipment weighs about 16 16,000 pounds, and my four-wheel drive did nothing once it came off the driveway.
Okay. Well, I noticed that the storage building, you put a gravel pad down.
That is correct.
Is that something that would resolve any what areas for where the trailer could be parked toward the back?
I would have to gravel from the front of my house all the way back to wherever you want that
Right.
because of, it's all soil.
But I noticed your driveway is gravel also, correct?
That is correct.
And have you ever looked into the cost of doing that, or?
But if I go by now, the documents that you tell me where it could be stored and where it can't be stored, I'm back on that property line that belongs to the national parks.
Oh, okay, well, from the cul-de-sac to the back of your property, I know you read some measurements out there. It looks like the minimum is 181 feet, is that correct?
Behind my house to the property line,
From the cul-de-sac to the back of your property.
but we're calling that the front yard. So I'm a little confused here. From the cul-de-sac,
Okay,
you're looking at the front of my property,
yeah.
and the village is saying you will not put anything in the front of this property.
Oh, okay, I'm just trying to get the measurement from the front of your property all the way back to the back, the very back where the Metro Park is.
That line, well, it's not from the cul-de-sac because there's an easement up there. But hang on, oh, look at Google. Nope. It's not giving me, my property line is more than 180 feet from the cul-de-sac.
Okay,
My property line is down at that transformer, when you came down the driveway to the left. That transformer and water box is on my property, that's the actual beginning. So you're talking 160, 180, you're talking more than 180 feet to the transformer, and then from that property to the back of the property is 280 feet, but my house is only about 30 feet from that back line. Did I answer your questions?
yes, I believe so. Is that correct, Rob? I know,
I think we're talking about two different things here, actually.
okay,
Mr. Conkey understood you as from the front to the, going backwards. Your net answer, your net question was, how much space do you have in your rear yard?
right,
And then he answered it by saying 30 feet.
yeah,
Yes, it was, you were both going after the same answer, but from two different directions.
okay. Yeah, 'cause
She asked me from the cul-de-sac.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
They're supposed to provide measurements, but I don't think we got any measurements with this
Right.
as far as the dimensions of the lot.
Right.
So I'm just trying to sort out exactly if there's any hardships that are being presented.
I guess, not to jump the gun, was the board going to recess at some point?
Yeah, we're going to recess here after we're done.
I'm not trying to
questioning.
rush you, but I'm going to excuse myself, and I'm going to bring everything up on the computer in the,
Yeah, where you can get to a
in
good
the
signal.
conference room.
Yeah.
Because I can't get a signal here.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to excuse myself, I'll be in there.
I don't know, Mr. Conkey, I'm just going to be a direct here. Have you looked into what it would cost to store your vehicle?
The RV, sir?
Yes, sir.
No, and the purpose and the reason being is I do kick the glide out. It did come out this weekend for an out-of-town person, and basically because of COVID, we wanted people kind of separated, so we gave couple of my family members that. Prior to COVID, I have, all my kids are out of state except the one in Canton.
Yes.
They come up and they want their privacy, so to me, it's nothing to push out a glide, clean sheets on the bed, and they have their own space and they're not bothering the old people in the house.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So you would use it for,
It gets used there, or it gets used going to Illinois, just went to Texas. It's gone to Maine, not that specific one, has gone for 28 years each year because of my mother-in-law and father-in-law. It's a usable piece of equipment. It's licensed, it's insured, it's brand new, well-maintained. I don't believe it's an eyesore. That is my thinking on this, sir.
No, it's just, our village codified ordinance says nothing in the front, you know.
So we could take, we're going where this shouldn't go, but we could turn around and have dilapidated equipment, put it behind our house, and let it rot there for 20 years, and that's okay. I have a
It's
neighbor
not,
with a-
it's not okay. It's not okay by my book,
Okay.
but I don't see any laws or
Okay.
ordinances that say you can't do that.
That's fine, and I have another neighbor that.
Right?
No, actually there is. We had a neighbor who had I think of a nerve spreader that they parked in the backyard. And it is, if it's considered in that dilapidated, it is garbage. And you can call the board of, the commissioner, the zoning, and they will take care of it.
Okay, I have two neighbors that need to clean up a yard due to
Yeah. If it's
equipment that
debris-
came off the assembly line at Detroit, sitting there rotting.
If it's debris.
Okay, that's what I need to know. But to answer your question, sir, and I apologize, no, I have not looked at putting it somewhere else.
But, I mean, you gave me a substantial answer that your family likes to come up and camp out, basically.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, he also indicated he had it stored in Carrollton before.
It wasn't, you call it storage, but if I go down there Friday and leave there Sunday night, I don't call that storage.
I thought you said when you lived in Cleveland.
Cleveland Heights,
It was.
that it stayed on my
was-
son's
It
property,
was located in Carrollton.
and we went every weekend for 3 years until he relocated.
Okay.
I know, question I had regarding the RV. Is it at all possible to move the RV to the side of your house that it's on right now?
No, sir, that's a hill,
That's a hill?
and I would have to take out 4 trees.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Any more questions from the board?
I might have one.
Bill?
Mr. Conkey, how many days would you say that unit is not parked at the residence, say on an average year?
On an average year?
Yeah,
2 months.
so it remains on the premises for 10 months out of a 12-month span, you would say?
Prior to COVID, and this house has been in undertasking, so we have not traveled like we used to. I bought a dilapidated piece of property
Okay,
and improved the village, so we have not traveled like we normally would, and then you created COVID. I'm gonna blame that on you, Steve.
Any more questions, Steve?
that's it.
Mr. Bell?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
On the board will take a short recess?
I can go back up there?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you
be
very
back. We'll be back. Time is 6:40. Kevin. Okay. Time is 7:14. We're back from recess. Everybody pretty much ready to go? All right. 7:15. The next portion of the hearing, Mr. Kosky, is if there's any additional testimony. And then we go into some findings from the meeting. And then from the findings, we go into the vote of each request. So, is there any additional testimony that you have? Or anything else you want to add? Thank you. Is there any more comments from the board this time? I'm going to read a couple things. The variances apply to property, not to people. Personal hardship is not grounds for granting a variance, and financial difficulties are not grounds for granting a variance. These are general terms that we use. And the board shall not authorize variances unless we find the following. There are exceptional, extraordinary circumstances or conditions that apply to the property in use, or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other classes of uses in the same zoning district. Number 2, that such variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by other properties in the same zoning district and in the vicinity. And number 3, that granting of a variance will not materially impair the purpose of village ordinances or the public interest. So the next step is to address the hardship for the shed, address special conditions for the shed, and we'll stick to the shed, we'll vote on the shed, and then we'll move into the RV portion. And I'll take the hardship for the shed. That's one of our conditions. They must relate to the physical character of the property. They must be severe. We, as a zoning board, feel that there's an alternative, possibly an alternative available spot within the area that we could, or you could, by removing trees, to go into the rear yard area to fit the shed in. A front variance request would be inconsistent with the spirit and the intent of the codified ordinance. We'd like to take the next topic, please.
The special conditions.
Yes, sir.
I don't see anything in this particular piece of property that is unusual. There are no streams going in through the property, the backyard of the property. There may be a slight grade, but that can be dealt with. And there also, most of the properties around here, the backyards are wet to a certain extent, but they do dry up. So I do not see any type of special conditions existing at this time.
The next condition is appellant's rights. Who's going to take that?
I'll take it.
Thank you, Steve.
Appellate's rights, if there are particular and peculiar circumstances that deprive the appellate of rights possessed by other properties in the same zoning district, the property in question, the properties around it, there are no other sheds in a front yard or side yard. The facts that, these are the facts that should be concerned or considered when granting a variance.
Thank you, Mr. Felk. We have Ms. Workman. Which one would you like to take? Special conditions or practical difficulties?
For practical difficulties, it doesn't appear that there would be any practical difficulties that exist. The dimensions of the lot were given during the testimony and that was presented in the hearing, and it doesn't appear, given the dimensions of the lot and the topography, that there would be any difficulties to comply with the ordinances as they are written.
Thank you, Ms. Workman.
It does appear, in addition to that the variance would be substantial, and it would have severely affect the essential character of the neighborhood and of the adjoining neighbor properties owners' rights, because if you look at our village, it's very unusual, and I don't think, I've been on the board for approximately 8 years, I don't think we've ever granted a variance for a building to be in this far into the front or side lots.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. We haven't in the time that we've been on the board here. So the next step here is there a motion regarding this matter of the shed?
Mr. Chairman?
Motion to approve the variance.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the following motion. to grant a variance to codified ordinance 126607 F1/126607 A3 to permit the shed to remain in the front yard.
So, is there a second?
I'd like to second it.
Seconded by Mr. Bell. A motion was made by Mr. Pollack to 126607 F1 and for the shed to remain in its present location, seconded by Mr. Belk. Can we have a vote on the motion, please? Ms. Workman?
No, deny.
Mr. Pollack?
No.
Mr. Belk?
No.
The chairman votes no. The variance is denied, and the decisions of the Board of Appeals are final. If further action by Mr. Conkey regarding the decision may be appealed to the Court of Common Pleas within 30 calendar days. Just a side note to this vote to deny the variance. There is substantial room towards the rear of your property. We did calculate it to be approximately 83 feet.
My backyard's 83 feet.
That's correct.
That would only be, I'm not trying to have an argument here, but this is a public record,
Yes, sir.
and we did refer to it as the front yard again, and it's not the front, out of fairness. We talk about him encroaching with what the neighbor has to be. If you go to my neighbor at 7750 to my west, and you look at the front of his house, it stands where I have stood. He has 3 sheds and a carport that was turned into a garage, which is literally in the front of that house. So, I mean, that may be a whole other issue.
It would be.
Okay, then I'm gonna roll down that road,
Yeah, it would be an issue if it's a complaint, yes,
okay?
yes.
The 87 feet is only gonna be in the far right corner, which will be hang on, which would be my
Northwest.
northeast corner.
I thought it would be the
My
south.
northwest is, along that tree line is not my property is there, that's it. I don't get that green vegetation wedge until you go from west to east. That's when I create that, what looks like a triangle where my house is sitting. Under the trees. So we talk about elevation from the front of the house to that corner of the lot drops a little over 10 feet. Down that side where the camper is. That over there drops down at least 10 feet.
Oh, we're talking about the other side of the property line,
That other side of that property line is a point between,
are we not? We're talking about the other side of the property, where that green box is. There's
am I allowed
83
to walk
feet.
up to Rock?
Yeah,
I don't have a document with me, but.
No, that's fine.
yeah.
Can anybody bring that sheet of paper back, Steve?
Steve's got it.
So we're looking at.
Yeah. Sit down if you have to.
No, this is what the young kids that you send to college for do for you. That small property is my property line.
Right.
That shed is sitting in the new code.
Right, so this is all we did. We utilized what you're using there,
Okay,
and we dropped a pin at the back corner of the garage there and measured to that property line, and that measures 83 feet. Which, that would be the rear yard.
okay, but that's, the back of this house sticks out another 10 feet. So what are you gonna call my rear property? Is it gonna be the back of that?
The rear property, by definition, is whatever the most prominent is. So since you have more in this plane,
Okay,
from that plane backward would be the rear property line,
Okay.
since there's more in that plane, and then this is not as substantial. So it's whatever, almost like if you're
well, then
looking.
what I'm asking, don't take this too wrong, but that really ruins the view of me sitting on my deck. If that shed gets in the trees right about there, which I have tree coverage in front of it,
Right.
I'm gonna have to take 2 trees down, and I can get the company to bring it in.
What's the depth of your shed, 20?
20 feet long, by 10 feet.
So, I mean, go ahead and shrink that down. Why don't you turn, I'm just throwing
No, no.
spitballing ideas. Why don't you turn that,
Turn, don't be,
Well-
there we go. Turn, oh,
I'm saying turn the shed so the 10-foot wide.
then I'm taking down about 5 trees.
Okay, well then keep it that way. And just get it as close as you can there, in that plane.
If you,
Go ahead.
that's fine. If you want it shoved up against, there's a couple pine trees in there. If you would like, if the village would like it behind the pine trees, I don't have a problem. That's what we're here tonight for. I'm not looking for an appeal or going down that road at all. I'm just trying to live here.
Right.
So we want to take that, and is it not going to stay red? No, it's not. That's the way they deliver it in the middle of winter. So either you tell me to push against that tree, or you tell me to get it behind that tree line. And if you would like to come out and look at this,
I'll be happy to come out and look at it.
Yeah,
you guys,
yeah, that's what we
this shouldn't be
want.
hard.
That's what we want to do. I mean,
But I have,
we want you to
see that house?
move it.
Right,
That
back
house to
as
the power
much-
lines is
much
less
as you
than 40
can.
feet, that corner.
right.
So if that's 40, you're saying 80, I'm going to tell you,
Did you bring the sheet that we
No.
got the tag on? When I was in the back, I put it on the middle of your table.
I did not, no, that was the one that.
I'll run for it.
It's like the most important piece of information.
Okay.
I'll get my safe.
You know, I'll get it.
I'll get my safe distance from you.
Oh.
No, this is, it's not, it
That's-
shouldn't be, I didn't expect it to absorb so many man hours, and I apologize.
That's okay.
It's not intentional to screw with the bill.
We want to work with you. That's why we're not having it on a Tuesday when they have a council meeting, so we can spend the time and do what we want to help you.
Thank you very much.
And the last thing we want to do is have a continuance of this.
Not gonna happen.
We
I'm not,
want
I wouldn't even do that.
Yeah, we just want to keep going here.
Rob, he still has to apply for a zoning permit though, correct? Building zoning permit?
Lisa would have that, yes.
Okay.
Oh, you guys are killing me.
I didn't take anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would say I did my share most of the time.
Yeah, I don't have,
Oh, yeah, yeah. Is that the one you dropped the pin on?
what's that?
This one right here.
Is that the one you
That looks like another one.
Is that the one you had? Is that it?
That's a real thing.
I apologize.
All right, so all we did over here,
All your
we don't have a color plan. We got the pin, a point from there to there on the GIS. There's a disclaimer that this can't be deemed 100% reliable.
That's fine.
In my experience, property lines, the worst I've ran across is 5 feet off on the county records.
Okay.
This is what I utilize.
Okay, but you're, that's fine. You're taking that 83s off the center of the garage,
No, that's off the back corner of the garage.
the back corner of that garage?
Yes.
I don't want to say you're wrong. I have a walking stick at home when you show.
It's not me, it's
I know.
the county.
Hey, what's this? They told me I own this piece of property right here. I don't. I know, but I'm just saying is,
All right,
that's fine, but. Mr. Rich is talking about shoving it up against the tree.
Right.
Do we want it behind the tree? Shoving it against that tree, we're moving it 25 feet.
Yeah.
I put it behind the tree for the simple fact that then it's 100% done and over with. Because
Okay.
then you're in the rear lot line, you're not encroaching upon anything.
Kind of, even in that. I don't think I'm totally, like, that. If you would like to, you and I get together, I take you're a key player in this, and you want to say, Jim, here's 10 by 12, this is where you're putting it. I don't like it
That's
if
fine.
you.
I mean, I'm more than
That's
happy to come out, whatever's good for you. That's
Okay.
fine.
Let's move on. Thank you for your time.
The next item on the agenda is the recreational vehicle parked in the front yard, 1266.07 F7. Is there a motion regarding this matter, the RV? Motion to approve?
I'd like to make the following motion: to grant a variance to codified ordinance 126607 F7 to permit the RV to be stored in the front yard.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock. Is there a second?
I'd like to second it.
Seconded by Steve Belk. The motion was made to grant a variance to 126607 F7 codified ordinance to permit the RV to be stored in the front lot. The vote on the motion, Mr. Belk,
No.
Ms. Workman,
No.
Mr. Pollock,
No.
and the chair votes no. The variance has been denied, Mr. Klonke, on the RV being parked in the front of the property. Again, the decisions of the Board of Appeals are final, and any action that you would like to take can be made through the Common Court of Appeals within 30 days of the decision. Is there any comments on this, the board? Any more comments?
And Mr. Rich, I think this was the same situation as we had with the outbuilding, is it just doesn't appear that it meets the requirements for a variance because there does not appear to be any hardship. There's really no severe or unnecessary difficulties in complying with the code here. So the lot does not appear to have any type of special conditions given the dimensions and the size. So I think we have a similar issue as to the trailer as to the outbuilding.
Yeah, I know. I took an oath to, adhere to the codified ordinances, and, the codified ordinance states that anything such as an RV being parked in the front is not permitted. And I just couldn't see myself voting for it because of that. We took an oath, and it's here in our codified ordinances.
Right. And I think we go back to, the essential character of the neighborhood in our home village. Allowing RVs to be parked in the front lot severely affects property values and the characteristics of the neighborhood.
And if the village is tolerant allowing that to happen, then we should take other course of actions to resolve that. It just doesn't happen in communities, and I think it would impact the neighborhood and the village. Then you would have possibly boats being parked out front and other types of recreational vehicles. And I realize it's a very tough situation, especially when, there's a minimal amount of alternative spots to store. So, with that, is there a motion to adjourn the hearing?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the hearing.
I second.
The vote on the motion, Mr. Pollock,
Yes.
Ms. Workman,
Yes.
Mr. Velk,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Our hearing is adjourned at 7:35 p.m. Thank you very much.